What's going on, YouTube? It's been a while since I made a video. I'm just going to talk about Common Core here. I got a list next to me and we're just going to go through it, say a little bit about each thing. Just to keep in mind, I just got out of Common Core last week, but it's long and there's a lot of things that I've forgotten, not necessarily technical flying things, but more or less like what happens in each phase or how it all breaks down. This is just going to be off the top for somebody that doesn't have any experience, and more or less for my own memory. Maybe I can look back on this in a few years and be like, man, we're doing it. So anyway, first thing you got to do is pass BOLIC or WOBIC. BOLIC's for the lieutenants, WOBIC's for the warrant officers. I don't remember much about that, to tell you the truth. It was, I want to say, a handful of weeks. I don't remember. It's where I initially made like my first acquaintances within the aviation community. I'm a prior service Marine, so I don't have a whole lot of Army experience, and I was a ground guy, is what the Army guys say, or refer to it. So now I've picked that up. I'm learning. So I was at 0311, and that pretty much. Anyways, so BOLIC is just like your introduction to things. Like, this is how aviation works, this is who does maintenance, and this is how platoons are set up in companies and brigades. And there was some vehicle identification. You look at 50 different vehicles and you got to be like, that one is a tank, and it's more specifically this tank, that kind of thing. I don't remember much about it, just meeting everybody, getting your feet wet in that community. And I would imagine I will continue, and if you go to BOLIC, you'll continue to run into those same folks throughout your career. So it's just good. One thing that we did in BOLIC, now that I'm remembering, is we did the range, and we did what is it called? Land nav. So I'm not going to name any names, but they told us, don't walk on the roads, right? They told us like 800 times. And then, anyways, long story short, I'm like getting my bearings right. I'm like, okay, I'm going to shoot out to this road, and if there's a road in front of me, then I know exactly where I'm at. I was like, good, got it. So I walk out there, and I'm pretty sure it was at night. I walk out there, and I'm like, oh, there's the road. This is the boundary. They said not to walk on the roads, but I wanted to make sure that the road was there. So I walk out to the road, and I'm like, got it. I turn around to walk back, and there's a dude walking on the road. And I was just like, what's up? And he's like, what's up? And he just kept walking down the road. So I was like, all right, cool, man. So then I turned back around and shot my azimuth and went on my way. But just little things like that, just, I don't know. If I remember it and you do it in your time, then somebody else will remember it, if you see what I'm saying. So anyway, BOLIC, shot the range. That was whatever. I'm pretty sure I was expert on both. I do remember, though, the pistol range. I thought I shot 30 out of 30, and they told me I shot 29 out of 30, but I shot 30 out of 30. So that's just, it doesn't matter either way. I think expert's like 28 and above, so it's still an expert. But I remember that too. I was like, I don't think so. Pretty sure I hit it, but whatever. So that's BOLIC and WOBIC for a short thing. I don't know what the warrant officers do. SEER, you can't really talk too much about SEER, but what I will say is they give you a packing list, and there's optional items on there. I would bring those optional items, like anything that will make you more comfortable in SEER. I brought my extra pillow, and I brought some linens and some things. Yeah, you can't have your phone, I don't think. So you have to bring your own like alarm clock or whatever. Just bring an alarm clock. It makes it easier, and you don't have to worry about waking up and stuff. So now you're done with BOLIC and WOBIC, or WOBIC, and you've done SEER. So you've got all that behind you. You've probably taken you at least 2 or 3 months to do those two things. Now you're in Common Core, so now it's time to start flying, right? So before you actually go wiggle the sticks, you have 2 weeks of ground school, which I don't really know if it's considered ground school the whole way through because you take classes all the way to the end. So I mean, I've heard people refer to it as ground school for those 2 weeks, but you learn the whole time. There's flight line and then there's class. Like, it's together. So I personally would consider ground school all the stuff that you learn the whole way through. So take it how you want it. You got 2 weeks of just school before you start flying. So 2 weeks of ground school, you I guess the first day you, or at least I did, meet my stick buddy. And my stick buddy was a cool dude. He's from Texas. I'm pretty sure I annoyed him a lot, but that's okay. That's what stick buddies are for. He's a good guy, though. We were both old dudes. So I was 30. I'm still 30. I turned 30 in SEER, so that was great. But anyways, he's like 20. No, I'm sorry. He's 34. He's got 2 kids. I don't have any kids, but we're both older dudes. So that was kind of nice because we both could relate to each other. And thinking about it now, I don't know that they would have cared, but maybe they just saw that, like, these are the old guys, let's put them together and they'll get along. He's a pretty good dude, though. I mean, I liked him. We had fun times together. So you meet your stick buddy, and this is the 2 weeks that you're in ground school. You do aeromed stuff, so you learn about like spatial disorientation and all the things that happen to your body whenever you go up in altitude and you got stuff going on with you. Just different medical things. I used to work at a hospital, and I remember calling my friend, I don't want to say his name, but he's a nurse practitioner, and I called him and was like, "Hey man," and he was like, "What?" And I said, "I'm a doctor now." So, you just learn basic stuff. It's nothing crazy. In that airmed portion, they did put us in like the simulator where they deprive you of oxygen, and then you do like this little puzzle, and it or like questions and stuff, and it just lets you know, like, these are my signs for whenever I'm low on oxygen. This is how my body reacts. And I remember there being 3 signs for me. I got sweaty, like I got hot, and I get like the meat sweats. I don't know if anybody else can relate to that, but I get the meat sweats. So I got sweaty. I was nauseous. My stomach hurt. And I don't remember the other thing, actually. Sweaty and my stomach hurt. And I was just like delusional. Like I could think in my brain like what was going on, but whenever I went to write it on the paper, it was just like not coming out. Like I just like eye coordination, hand coordination was not there. So they just let you know, like, hey, if you experience these symptoms, I need to pass the controls and move on. So in those 2 weeks, you learn cockpit simulator. So you go to like the CPT is what they're called, but you get a little book, they give you a video, you go watch the video, then you go in the CPT and you start flipping stuff on. You run through the pre-flight book, and you just get a pretend to turn on a helicopter. It seems crazy looking back on it because now I can just go like bloop, 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 turn it all on and go. But at the time, it was like looking at it was like reading a foreign language. It was really hard to do. So now that you got those 2 weeks done, you go to P1. So P1 is primary 1, or phase 1 of primary, and this is where you like start your daily questions. So they give you this folder, and if you've done any research on flight school at all, you've probably heard about daily questions, but you memorize these like 12 questions that they're going to ask, or 10 questions, or however many questions it is. And I remember P1 and P2 being mostly like EP and limits questions, more or less. So you memorize like what's the definition of like land immediately or land as soon as practicable, or what's the weight that the helicopter can weigh, or what's the oil and engine like temperature limits, what's the pressure limits, that kind of stuff. It seems like a lot, or it did to me. It seemed like a lot going through it, but looking back on it, it really wasn't that much. If you can get a hold of that information ahead of time, that would be my number one recommendation. That's what I'm looking for, is like study all that stuff ahead of time, so that's what made the day so long. It's just memorizing those stuff. I actually came up with a way to help myself memorize, and what I would do is I would write down the first word in each sentence like, or the first letter of each word in each sentence. So if it said, like, I'm going to mess this up, but if it said, like, be home at 8, I would write B space H space A space 8. And then I would have to, like, recall, okay, well, what does B stand for? What does A stand for? What does H stand for? 8 o'clock, okay. Got that one. That's, it's a number. But that helped me a lot. So you get your daily questions, you figure out how terrible those are. For daily questions, I stayed about 2 weeks the whole time ahead. And I know some guys did them like the night before. I just didn't have enough time for that. Like, I barely slept. I was lucky if I got 6 hours of sleep before each day. So, and it's not because I wanted to. Like, we were busy studying, and I wanted to be prepared for the next day, and didn't have time to go to the gym, which I really like going to the gym. And everybody says, like, hey, keep your physical fitness up or whatever. It's like, yeah, but I got a check ride, bro. So, I mean, what do you want? What's worse, failing a check ride or being fat? So, I don't know. That's how I saw it. Daily questions. So P1 also, you get out there, you pre-flight, you learn how to hover. Well, I guess you meet your IP. So, I had the same IP from P1 all the way through advanced instruments, and I didn't like him at first, but he grew on me. And then once I figured out, like, his personality, and I think once he figured out ours, we really started to click, and we had a good time. So P1, you meet your instructor, you figure out your daily questions, you learn how to hover, you learn how to pedal turn, you do just basic stuff. I'm pretty sure it was 3 takeoffs and 3 landings was the check ride there. And so you just go out to the stage field, you might make a radio call or two. I think we talked on the radios pretty much from day one, but he slowly added more radio calls in. But so we would make the radio call that we had the right ATIS information, like the weather and the altimeter setting and all that. And I don't want to get too into it, but we listened to the pre-recorded message that they play every hour, and we got what we needed to out of that pre-recorded message. And then we called ground, and we would be like, hey, we got this, we're ready to go. And then we would go over to where we took off, or where we're going to take off, do our hover power checks, all that stuff, and then we would leave. So P1 was pretty easy. It was like 3 VMC approaches, which is you can see more or less there's 2 ways to fly. There's by instruments or by your eyeballs, and this is all eyeball stuff. So you go out there, you do your little VMC coming down, and then that was it pretty much. It was relatively straightforward. I was pretty panicky in P1 and P2. BI I had a pretty good time, and I'm getting ahead of myself, but I mean panicky not in the sense of like in the aircraft freaking out, but I'm talking about like at home. Like, I would be at home and study, and it'd be like, I can't go to sleep, I need to study more, or I gotta read this, or I gotta do this, and I just didn't find my like way about how to go about each day really yet. So that was P1. P2 was traffic patterns and different types of takeoffs and landings. So P2, you learn about traffic patterns more or less, and I've heard them referred to as idiot circles, which is pretty funny. But more or less, if you think about like one runway, you gotta like take off, come around. Well, I'll go this way. You take off, you come around, and then you come back and land. And then you take off and come around, and then you come and land. That's a traffic circle, more or less. It's just a circle around your runway. And you do those. There's a certain way you got to do it. You got to like take off and be at a certain altitude at a certain point, turn at a certain point. There's like markers on the ground that you could use, or you could use altitude, however your IP wants you to do it. Anyways, you got to figure all that out. So now you're starting to actually fly a little bit, which I guess VMC approaches and stuff, that is too. That was fun. So you do your traffic patterns, landings and takeoffs. So there's I mean, landings is landings. You could land to a hover or to the ground. Um, Takeoffs, we did vertical takeoffs, like a regular VMC takeoff, I guess, and then like, and I don't want to use the term like the actual terms, if that makes sense, just to not to confuse you or anything, I guess. But take off straight, you take off normal, and then you take off like on using the ground. You stay in ground effector, meaning that the air coming through the rotor system helps the helicopter like use less power. Then you take off on the ground, and then you go through ETL, which this is already getting kind of dumb, but you go through ETL and then you take off that way. So I always thought those were the most fun. But that's just me. One thing that did scare me the first couple times that we did it is that whenever you take off and you're like, say this is the ground, and you're taking off and you just like stay close to the ground, you dip a little before you go, and that dip, I was always afraid of the skids like hitting the ground and then just going like boom and rolling over. You know, they're not going to let you do that. That's why they get paid. So, anyways, just All right, so takeoffs and landings. That was a check ride. I already messing this up. This is all over the place. It's probably not a very well structured video, to tell you the truth, and I'm kind of just doing this on the fly. But for the check rides, going back to P1, that was my only check ride that wasn't a DAC. So that people that aren't full-time instructors, I guess per se is probably the best way to put them, but they grade a little bit harder, I think. And I'm not just saying that because I had them pretty much the whole time, but everybody that I've talked to has had a similar opinion. So I know I'm not the only one that thinks that. But P1, I had one of the other IPs. Like, we had an IP over here, and then the guys that sat next to us have an IP, and then we just switched IPs for the check ride. And that was cool. And all the other check rides I had DACs. So P2, we had that check ride, and that was cool. And that was pretty much it. So just P2, traffic patterns and stuff. And then different types of takeoffs and landings. And then, P2, I guess we also did auto rotations and run-on landings. So auto rotations, like you turn the power off and you just use the air coming up through the rotor system to maintain the rotor system without decaying, and then you come down. There's a way to do it, but you pitch and then you pull power and then you land to a hover. And then run-on landings is like landing like an airplane. You just come down real shallow approach. That was one of the approaches that I didn't mention earlier. And you just go on the runway and land like an airplane. All right, so getting into basic instruments. I had a lot of fun in basic instruments. I think instruments was probably my most fun time. I definitely think so. Maybe nights for a different reason. But instruments for me was fun. And I think it was because there's like a specific way to do it, if that makes sense. Like when you're doing by your eyeballs, like VMC, you can kind of do things a little on like how you want to do them. Instruments, you plan a route and you use checkpoints that are predetermined, and ATC tells you what they want you to do. So they're making a little bubble around your helicopter or airplane, and they're just making sure you don't hit anybody else or anybody else hits you. So if this is going to happen, they'll figure it out like way ahead of time. They'll be like, hey, you come up, and then you come down, and then you turn this way, and then you turn this way, and then turn this way and this way, and then you just kind of do that, and then they'll put you back on the path or whatever. It's not actually how it goes, but just for illustration, they make sure that you don't run into each other. So there's nothing you really have to worry about. You just got to listen to what they say and do what they say, and then you're good. So it's kind of cool. And I just enjoyed it. Like I feel like I understood it for the most part, like pretty like soon. So I just liked it. BI for Common Core, you go to the you go to the simulators, and you don't actually fly the helicopter, you fly a fake helicopter, and you can do all your things. You learn how to do holding patterns, which is pretty much like a traffic pattern, but just with no landing. So you just do circles, and you learn how to enter and exit and correct for wind, and you learn about approaches. Anyway, I enjoyed instruments. BI, you're in the simulator. AI, you go back out to the helicopter and you go do it for real. So all these airports that you've been flying in the simulator, you get to actually go to them, and then you do a couple approaches here. You do a missed approach. You go to a different airport. You land. Depending on who you have as a flight instructor, you can go in and eat, or you go in and use the bathroom real quick. You put a bunch of chicken in your pocket, and then you get back in the helicopter, and then you go. And that's what we did. Our instructor liked him. He was a good guy, but he was not about wasting no time. Like, he would land, one of us would be getting fuel with him. Whoever was flying next would go in and use the bathroom, put a bunch of chicken in our pocket, or like eat ice cream. There's a couple times where I got ice cream if I was second, and then switch. So once we switched, the guy that was in there came out, got in the right seat, did the pedals, did the seatbelt, did whatever, programmed all their stuff in the GPS, and then the second guy was out, getting ice cream or whatever. So I love doing that. I love flying first and going to Andalusia. That was my favorite because they had really good fried chicken. They had soft serve ice cream, so that was a nice. I just remember getting my little ice cream, walking out to the helicopter, and I was like, that was pretty fun. Getting in the back and just being like, just eating my ice cream. It was a good time. Anyways, so advanced instruments, pretty much the same thing as BI, except you're doing it for real. So you're making your little plan. Probably should talk about ForeFlight. I used ForeFlight. I bought it with my own money. I'm a National Guard guy, and our state has iPads that they have ForeFlight on. So most of us, I don't know of that many people that didn't have to buy it. And when I say have to buy it, you don't technically have to buy it because you can use paper documents. I'm gonna tell you right now, you're not gonna want to, because that paper book is like this thick, and you're not gonna want that on your lap and flipping it trying to get to the right page. You could use bookmarkers, I guess, or like those little sticky tabs that you mark it down on or whatever. But I drew all over my stuff on ForeFlight, which was nice. You get a little Apple Pencil. Then I would write on there, like, this is the direction that I'm going to come in. This is when I'm going to do my thing. This is when I'm going to do this. This is when I'm going to do my 5 W's or whatever. This is the way that the system has to be set up in order for me to do this approach. And there's different things that you learn about, different approaches, not just the precision and non-precision, but there's also categories of those things that you have to figure out how to do, and what they mean and how to fly them and all that, which it'll come. But anyways, yeah, AI and BI were pretty good. I don't know. I liked it. I liked it a lot. And this was a very teary-eyed moment because this was the last time that we got to see our guy that we've been through all the other stuff with. I know it seems like not that long whenever somebody says like, hey, P1 through AI is 16 weeks or whatever, but that's a long time. And time moves slower in this course, I think. Like, whenever you're awake for 16 to 18 hours a day and all you're doing is this stuff, time goes by slow, I think. Like, in the day, it goes by slow. The week goes by slow. And then the weekend, you blink and it's over. So that's just how I feel about it. But yeah, AI and BI were good. That's probably my most enjoyed time. Somewhere in there, I don't remember exactly where, but we did a little solo, and it wasn't a real solo. It was like we went to I'm pretty sure it was like in P2. We went to one of the stage fields, and then the instructor got out. Me and my stick buddy were just in there, and then we just did a couple traffic patterns. Like, we just took off, did a circle, came right back, and it was super controlled. There was 3 of us on a lane. Bloop. this guy would take off, and this guy would take off, and then we would take off. We were the third. And you do it that way so that the first guy that takes off can be the first one to land. There's no like confusion about who's doing what, and you just kind of do your thing. Yeah, so that was that. I liked BI and AI, chicken and ice cream. Remember that one. So we said goodbye to our flight instructor, and then we got a new flight instructor, or new instructor pilot. I guess that's what they're technically called. So BWS was basic warfighter skills, and it was supposed to be 4 weeks. It was 3 weeks for us because they checked my IP this time. I did not like my first IP. I will say he did a really good job with giving us both the same product, meaning that if one of us flew first, the second one that flew got the exact same flight. He got the exact same treatment as the first guy. The same jokes, the same things, the same turns, the same exact order that we did before. And I like that because it was consistent. And we knew exactly what we were going to get that day. And it was nice because we knew exactly what to expect. And I feel like at this point of your like aviation career, you're not going to benefit from anything else. Anyways, when we got to BWS, this guy was, I felt like he was more like, I'm important and I've been here for a long time and I know everything and you know nothing, which is fine because it was true for the most part. But it was just like that. I just had a hard time dealing with his personality because he was not somebody I would even respect now, really, tell you the truth. Like, this is just so off-putting. Like, I don't know. I didn't care for him as a person, but as an instructor, he also, like, unlike our first flight instructor, was he's very all over the place. Like, if you flew second with him, you were going to get screwed out of time. The first guy would fly a lot because he would try to get all the things done in the time, and then he wouldn't, or we wouldn't. That's ultimately our faults, right? We wouldn't get it done, and then the first guy meaning, and then when the second guy went to go fly, the route plan that we had planned we wouldn't get to do because we would run out of time and we'd have to come straight back. So that was a pretty common occurrence. BWS, you make your little map book throughout P1, P2, BI, and AI. You have all these maps, and you have to go to the tech library, sketch everything down, and make a map book, more or less. I don't know. You fold them up all crazy, and then you can flip from like up and down, left and right, and you make these little plans like, hey, we're going to go here today. And then you'd say, okay. And instead of going on ForeFlight and planning on ForeFlight, you would go on your map book and plan on your map book. I never used AMPS. I used ForeFlight the whole time. And what I would do is just plan the route on ForeFlight because I had all the overlays that I got from somebody else, which I wouldn't know how to do that. I still don't know how to do that now. I just had somebody else put on my iPad for me. So I got lucky there that the homeboys from Bolick, actually, some of them started ahead of me. So I got with them and I said, hey, I'm about to go to this. What do I need? What do I need to do? And they were like, oh, come over here, bro. I'll hook up your iPad. So they hooked up my iPad, and I had all the overlays and everything that I needed on my iPad. So I didn't have to use AMPS. Took me a little bit longer, it seemed like, than the AMPS guys. But I feel like I had a more thorough understanding of what I was doing that day if I wasn't flying second and I could actually do it. So, anyways, BWS, yep, you get your... They're called remote training sites, but they're little fields all over the place. And your instructor will just say, hey, we're going to go to RT 399 today, or tomorrow, I mean. And you're like, cool. So then you go home, you plan from the airport that you're taking off at to 399 to wherever else he wants to do, and then that's it. And so, I mean, I say that's it. It probably took me 4 hours in the beginning to plan a flight at the end of the day. And then when I was getting close to being done with BWS, it took me about 3. and that's with like everything, like your map, your route. There's these little time hack cards that you got to make, and then LZPZ recon or whatever, like a little overlay of this is the field that we're going to, and these are all the things that we have to look out for in that field, and studying, more or less. So that's that. BWS, and then after BWS is over, the funnest day I thought in all of Common Core was we got a solo. And the cool thing about soloing in BWS is that you get a takeoff from the airport, and then you get to go fly to another airport, and then you switch, and then the other guy flies back. I went first on our solo, which was pretty cool. I remember I had like a seizure on the radio. I was just so pumped, and I was telling my stick buddy, I was like, "Hey man, we're doing it, bro. We're doing it. We're pilots, man." Like, obviously being sarcastic because I still don't really feel like a pilot, but I was telling him like, "Yo, we're doing it. We're going. We're gonna do all these things. We're gonna like it's gonna." I was just hyping him up, just getting him like excited, and so we got in there. We turned it all on. We were like, boop 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 boop. He was reading me all the stuff. I was just doing it. Got the engines both started. Super clean, by the way. First try, no abort starts or anything. Got everything up. Called ground. As soon as I keyed that mic on ground, I was just like, it was really bad. I like said half the stuff backwards, like out of order, and the ground guy was just like, all right, dude. I was like, oh shit. So then I keyed the mic and I said it all the right way right after. He was like, what? and then I said it, and it made me feel, and I think it's funny now, but I still kind of honestly feel bad about it, because everybody that's in our class, I wouldn't say everybody, but most everybody is out there on the radio, and if they're not on the radio, they're probably in their helicopter starting it up, or maybe they were still pre-flighting or whatever. They were out there, but they hearing me wise, I guess is what I'm saying, and anyways. I was just like, man, I don't want to look stupid in front of everybody. It's so competitive in this course. I'll go ahead and say it now because I'll probably forget. But I did not finish that great. Like there was 14 of us. I was about 8th, I think, in the class, and I tried really hard. Like I tried hard, dude. Like I don't know. There's honestly, I don't feel bad about it at this point because there's nothing else I really could have done, if that makes sense. Like, it's just it's just competitive, man. Like, it's just I don't know how else to put it. We were all pretty close, within like a point of each other, from like the lowest grade being maybe a 89 to the highest being like a 91. So I guess 2 points, but. It's really close, more or less what I'm getting at. So you got to try the whole time. Like, don't give up, don't burn out. And I will say, nights is when I finally did, like, hit my threshold of this is terrible. Like, I can't keep pushing this hard. Like, I can't keep studying 6 hours a day or 4 hours a day or whatever. Which was a good and a bad thing because I finally relaxed and I got over that like initial shock of being in flight school finally towards the end of Common Core. But yeah, so getting into nights, we started nights, and this instructor was completely opposite of the first two. He the first guy was super consistent. He was fair, but also held us accountable. I really enjoyed him teaching us. It seemed like our personalities got along. Everything worked fine. The BWS guy, he was super full of himself, I thought. He kept us there really late, which I will say the one good thing that he did do is that he just rode us so hard that we just killed that check ride. Like we destroyed it. The guy asked a couple questions, we knew the answers immediately, and then he just stopped asking us questions. So I'm not. I didn't like him personally, which is it doesn't matter because he's not there to be our friend. He's there to teach us, right? And I feel like he did get us prepared for the check ride. So ultimately, he did do a good job. I just didn't enjoy him as an instructor. Um, I remember my buddy asking a question, and instead of answering the question, he kind of just braided him a little bit, and I didn't know the answer either. So I feel like the question, I don't remember what the question was, but at the time I just remember being like, man, why don't you just help us learn, you know? But I guess he had his own methods, and they all do. So, um, anyways, BWS nights. This instructor said maybe 3 sentences to us the whole time. I know that I don't even know what he flew, to tell you the truth, before. Um, but which, I mean, again, he's not there to be our friends. I didn't really, I don't even know if we ever really, I introduced myself to him. I don't know if he did to us, but what I did like about our nights instructor was that it was like big boy time. He sat us down. He was like, okay, you guys check road, right? Or you guys soloed, right? And we were like, yeah. So he's like, so you took off from this airport, you went to another airport, in like 3 words. I don't know how he explained it. He barely spoke, but pretty much said, you guys soloed, you're competent, figure it out. So we were like, okay. So he said, from now on, why are you asking me what we're doing? Like, and to give a little context, we would go out to an RT, and we'd have a couple tasks to do for the flight, like land, slope landing, do a masking and unmasking, do an NOE traffic pattern, meaning there's different levels of flight, like height wise. In BWS and in nights, you fly less than 200 feet, more or less. Um, I don't want to get too into the weeds, but you fly lower than you would most of the other times. So in those lower levels of flight, there's heights and stuff for it. He was like, you guys know what to do. Tell me what you're doing, and if it's unsafe, I won't let you do it. So we're like, cool. So this was actually really cool because now we're actually flying. Like, now there is no him berating us or like going back to the BWS instructor. He would tell us, you're going to lead the flight. And we'd be like, okay. And then we'd take off to do something. He'd be like, no, you're not doing that. Do it this way, and do it this way, and do it this way, and do it this way. And then we're going to do this, and then we're going to do this. So we never actually got to do that. But with this nights guy, he meant it. He said it and he meant it. So when we took off, he'd be like, okay. And we'd tell him what we're doing. He'd be like, all right. And then we would get to the end of the flight, and then he would say, why'd you do that? That was stupid. And we'd be like, what do you mean? And he'd explain it, and then we would feel dumb. But I feel like that was a better way to learn, because in order to learn, you got to make mistakes. You don't have to, but that's generally how I learn, by doing. And I really take it to heart. If I mess something up, I don't want to do it again. So that was pretty cool. So by the end of nights, I felt like we were pretty confident, even though it was only 2 weeks long. Those 2 weeks of us pretty much running the show, and him just sitting there and just going, okay, all right, okay, sounds good. Like, it gave a lot more confidence to us that we were actually making the decisions, and whatever decision that we made, we had to live with the consequences of our actions, which is ultimately, I guess, what's going to happen when we get big boys, like when we finally leave this place. So yeah, so that was nights. We did our night check ride. I will say our night check ride was the hardest out of all the other check rides, because that dude, he was a DAC. He pulled out this list, and it was probably, I don't know, it was probably like the size of a cell phone. I don't know where my phone is, but it was about the size of a cell phone, like a standard cell phone, and it had this 8 font, I guess, you know what I'm saying, like on Word or whatever, really tiny font of all these subjects, and he just had a pencil, and he would ask us a couple questions about each topic, and if we got them all right, he would cross it out, and he was just doing that the whole time. And anytime that we got something wrong, which I'll talk about, he would put a little star next to it. So the one thing that I remember that we got wrong is that he asked us, okay, tell me about wind recognition. And we were like, okay. So if you look at the top of the trees, you can see which way they're blowing, right? And he was like, no, that's wrong. We're like, okay. He said, tell me about the water. How do you tell wind from the water? And we're like, okay, well, you look at the water, and wherever the ripples, like if you have ripples moving this way, the wind's coming from that way because it's pushing the ripples, across the pond. And he was like, and we got that wrong. And he marked us down for it, but we were like, okay, well, at the end of the check ride, we were like, what? So, what's the answer? And he said, in order to recognize like the wind against the trees, is you have to look at the underside of the leaves. So if the underside of the leaves are showing, that's where the wind's coming from, like blowing them back up, because the underside is lighter than the top side. And we're like, okay, that makes sense. And then we said, what about the water? And he was like, okay, well, the way that you tell water is that you look and see where the ripples aren't. So if you have a tree, I keep doing this. You have a tree and you have water, right? And the like steady spot is right here, and then over here it's ripply. You know the wind's coming from this way because it comes over, misses the clean water, and then makes the ripply water over here. So this water's clean. We're like, okay, that makes sense too. And then we felt really stupid, but that's pretty much how that went. But there was only a couple things we got wrong with that guy, which means that all our flight instructors were good. I honestly probably need to redo this again to make it better, like structured. But I'm just gonna throw this up there, and if it gets some like views or whatever, I'll leave it, and if it doesn't, I won't. I guess I'll redo it. But hopefully this helped you. This is pretty long, and there's another guy that I've seen. He's a captain, and he's done one of these like review videos for. Well, he actually breaks it down into separate videos. But this is a lot of content to talk about. I mean, this is 6 months worth of stuff, 9 months worth of stuff, depending on holds and stuff. So, if you want any sort of like extracurricular stuff, or like if you want me to elaborate on any of this, which I kind of made myself sound a little stupid with the precision and non-precision. The thing about instruments is that you fly them for BI and AI, right? And then you don't until advanced airframe. You do instruments again. So I got really good at instruments when we were doing it, and then we went from flying instruments to BWS, where we're flying VFR again, and we're flying low to the ground. We're doing contour and low level flight and NOE flight and stuff. So then it just kind of, you can only memorize so much at a certain time. I'm sure that when I revisit it, or even if I wanted to fly, say that I wanted to fly advanced instrument flight right now, and I was like, hey, tomorrow I'm flying I'm flying an instrument flight. Then I would go on for a flight. I'd plan it out. I would read over all my stuff. I would do it. I would be just fine at it, but like just off the top of my head without like looking at it, couldn't tell you much about it. I mean, there's certain things that I could probably talk about. I don't know. I'm probably rambling at this point, honestly. Hopefully this wasn't too cringy. One thing that I've noticed with just the Army in general, or like military in general, is like this is just an example. You go to boot camp, right? And then you come home for like 2 weeks or whatever on recruiting duty, or you come home on boot camp leave. And then you see somebody else that hasn't gone to boot camp that's gonna go, and then you just talk them all up, and you're like, oh, this is gonna be like this, and it's gonna be like this, and this is gonna happen, and this is gonna happen, to me, that's like, I've seen that happen multiple times, and it's cringy. It's bad. Like, it makes my bones hurt whenever I do that. And I'll tell you, it happened here a couple times. Um, there was a dude in PE2 that was like telling this guy in P1 about like, oh man, you'll get your hover, like it's easy if you just do this, this, and this, like talking about like he's done it for 10 years. And it's like, bro, that was you 2 weeks ago. Like, you think I couldn't teach somebody how to hover right now, and I have however many hours I have, like less than 200, right? So like, can I hover? Yeah. Can I do it good? Yeah, I could hover pretty good. Can I sit down and teach somebody else how to do it? Probably not. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know. Like, am I like, I feel like I'm gonna need probably, I mean, I will need another 700 hours before I can actually work as a helicopter pilot. So to act like I know everything and I have all the answers is just, to me, that's ridiculous. Like, I don't see the point in that. I'm gonna put my flashlight back up. Yeah, I don't know. I'm ranting at this point. Hopefully, what I'm getting at is hopefully this wasn't cringy. Hopefully that you got something from this, and this explains a little bit, or gives you some sort of insight. I wish that I would say, okay, so taking it away, like if I had to do everything over again, I wish, the one thing that I wish that I would have had is the study material. If you can get a hold of the study material ahead of time, you'll be so much better off. Like if you can get a hold of those study sheets and like the EP and limits that you have to memorize and all that stuff, it's gonna make your life way better. That's what I would do. And how I would go about doing that is go to Karen's around flight line change, and if you don't know what the flight line change is, go into the office where everybody has their ALSI equipment. If you don't know where the ALSI equipment is, literally ask anybody, and they'll tell you. Go into that ALSI building and be like, hey, when does everybody show up? And they'll tell you around this time. You say, okay. And then you go stand outside of that building and you start asking people, hey, let me get the study material. Hey, I'm not in Common Core yet, but I'm coming and I need the study material. That's what I would do ahead of time. Now I'm going to the 60 course. I know guys that are in that course, so I've already got the stuff to study and stuff. But that would have cut down a lot of my stress. Is those EP and limits, learning those early. You can also go to the bookstore, the one-off base. I can't remember what it's called. The flight line maybe or something. I don't know. It's if you ask around, everybody knows where it is. It's like down the street from Taco Bell, next to the haircut place. They got all the books and stuff. And they sell all the aviation things that you need, and everybody knows about it. So. This is probably a terrible video, now that I think about it. I don't really want to put this up, but I've already talked for an hour, so if you're a senior and you're watching this, please do not NJP me, I guess. I don't know what else to say. I don't know. Hopefully this helped. I'm going to close this out and rethink about uploading it, but I probably will. Talk to you in the next one.